Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and my internet is still out, but hopefully you guys are getting this tomorrow afternoon, which is Monday, because that's when the technician is going to be dispatched to come out here. Because I don't have access to internet on my computer, I can't really copy all of the questions, but I was able to take snapshots of them with my cell phone because I have internet access on my cell phone and plug these into my computer. So I just took screenshots of the questions. And you know what? I think that's going to be a viable way to do this. It won't let me do the timestamps at the bottom because I don't have all the text right here, but you guys can see the questions right here in the video. And I'm going to do this in one nice long video, have one big file so I can upload it all at once and get all this stuff up. Hopefully as soon as I have internet up. So let's go ahead and get this started. First question. Hi Jason, do you see any benefits of starting your day off in a keto fashion? Do you think that having MCTs as the primary fuel source in the morning has any advantages over carbohydrates in areas such as fat loss or cognitive function? All right, brother. No, I don't think there's any benefits to that. It makes no sense at all for people who actually do a ketogenic diet. I don't advocate ketogenic diets. I want that to be clear. But I've used them in the past. I know how they work. I actually fully understand the science behind it. And what you need to understand is that ketogenic diets are there to control appetite. They're there to control appetite. They're inferior for performance. They're inferior for fat loss on a calorie for calorie basis. There is no additional fat loss from it. That's been shown in metabolic ward study after study after study. They don't have any metabolic benefits. They have appetite control benefits. From number one, being in ketosis, and number two, because you have access to so few food types, you get bored with your food and eat less. In other words, if you eat steak, eggs, spinach, and water every day for a week, by the end of the week, your calories are going to be lower even if you eat as much of it as you want, because you just get bored of the food. So if you're only doing keto in the mornings, how does that help with your appetite through the day? You're not going to be in ketosis. So you're not going to get the mild nausea that blunts appetite, and you're going to have a wider food variety. Have you ever noticed that all the people who follow keto diets out there who try to do all these alternative keto foods where they make breads or whatever with almond flour, have you noticed they're all still fat even 3 years into their ketogenic diet? Have you noticed that? I have. I know people personally who do that. I'm not going to call them out, but I have friends and family who do these keto diets who still need to lose 50 pounds 3 years into their keto diet. But they sure do add that food variety, because that's not how these diets work. They don't help you burn fat, they blunt your appetite. So no, there would be no advantage to this at all, and MCT oils are still inferior to carbohydrates for both cognitive function and for performance in the gym. So no, carbs are simply a better source of training fuel for any high intensity activity such as GPP work or lifting weights. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I recently stumbled upon a YouTube channel, Thomas DeLore, promoting prolonged fasting 1 to 3 days. Could you explain the benefits and downsides of water/dry fasting? I did an entire video on this calling him out. What do you mean the benefits? The benefits of fasting are that you don't eat food and you will probably eat less calories and will lose body fat. The downsides, you lose muscle fasting that long, your performance suffers, you can have problems. As far as the dry and water fasting, there are no benefits. There's a zero fat loss benefits. There are only potential damage to your organs and dehydration. I covered that in the other video. Dry fasting is stupid, it's dangerous, it's not supported by the scientific literature, and quite frankly, anyone who could be convinced by a YouTuber to do dry fasting without going and discussing this with a nutritionist or whatever is probably, I don't know, of questionable intellect, a very gullible person, and again, he is simply taking advantage of people like that. He is taking advantage of people's gullibility based upon his physique, and he is doing harm to people, and I actually think he's a terrible person for making that video. And I hate to have to make a judgment call, because you can't always judge YouTubers' morality based upon videos they make. You really can't. But in the case of doing something like that, promoting something that could actually kill people that has no benefits, I'm just going to flat call that evil. All right, next question. Are manlet leverages real? Are shoulder lifters really better at pressing motions because of short arms? Well, I don't think leverage is the right word you're looking for, because leverage implies, different levers do things and apply leverage better. No, they move the weight a shorter distance. In other words, if you have short arms, you press the weight a shorter distance. If you have long legs, you squat the weight a shorter distance. If you have really long arms, or you have short legs, you deadlift the weight a shorter distance. It requires less energy and less total force production to move a weight a shorter distance. In other words, if you only have to move a weight 16 inches instead of 24 inches, it is easier to do so. So because of that, because they move the weight shorter distances, and in some cases it does matter with the lever arms, but if you have your technique perfect, you have good lever arms already. But what it allows them to do is to move the weights a shorter distance. And in some cases, when they do things like a sumo deadlift, right, when they switch over to something like a sumo or a high handle trap bar or a board press, shorter guys with shorter limbs can usually move tremendously more weight, because they already have to move the weight a short distance. And when they remove anything from the hardest part of the lift for them, it really allows for an enormous difference. That's when you really see those leverage differences come in. So it is just simply easier for them in that regard, so they need less muscle to lift the same weight. That's the reason shorter guys dominate weight classes in all strength sports. That's why taller guys don't stand a chance in lighter weight classes, anything under 200 pounds. It's just they can't build enough muscle on their frame to offset their bone weight, and the longer distances they have to move the weight, and the short guys will crush them. All right, next question. How much cardio is too much on a cut? I jog every day from 7 to 10 miles a day, sometimes more. I weight train 6 days a week. I hit the stationary bike if I get an opportunity to watch TV. What are the negative impacts of so much cardio and activity, if any? I'm trying to push my fat loss through activity and not cutting calories too hard. Currently at 2,600 calories a day during the week and 3,000 a day on the weekend. Thanks, coach. That's an insane amount of cardio. If you can handle the work capacity, it probably isn't a problem. The problem is that most people don't have the time to do that. Most people aren't going to get enough sleep and everything to recover from it. But if that's what you're trying to do, I'm of the opinion that in terms of your total metabolism at the end and ability to retain muscle, I generally believe it's better to do more activity than to cut calories. The problem is that obviously most people, the majority of people are going to have to cut calories to lose body fat. In your case, though, when you're doing that much cardio, you can probably get away with a lot of calories. I mean, 3,000 calories is still a pretty hefty amount. As long as you aren't overtraining and you're able to consume that many calories, you shouldn't have any malnutrition issues. You should have no trouble getting all of your dietary needs met. And as long as you're recovering from it and you have the work capacity for it, it's probably fine. It's probably fine. The main issue most people are going to have is going to be the time factors in recovery. So if you're able to do that, that's probably the superior way to cut. Probably is in the long term. So I don't really see any real negatives to what you're doing. It's going to be a problem if you start to get joint inflammation, connective tissue inflammation, and all of that from the workload, in which case you'll have to cut back a bit. But that's going to be a very, very individual thing. And we can't just say flat out that you're going to have that problem. If you're able to sustain that, it sounds like you are, then keep it up until it starts to become a problem. But if you start to experience overuse issues and inflammation, that's going to be the problem, and that's when you'll have to cut it back. And that may or may not happen to you personally. It has to do with maximum recoverable volume and work capacity of an individual. All right, next question. Jason, if I squat heavy while cutting, my workouts are brutal. I usually get very sick after heavy squats while cutting. Is it a good idea to lower the weight on squats during a cut? It's probably the most difficult thing I've ever tried to do on a cut. Well, I mean, it depends on how much strength are you losing. If it feels really, really heavy and you're grinding through it, you might be cutting too fast. I mean, if you can't squat when losing body fat and you can't replicate similar numbers, at least within 90 to 95% of what you were doing when bulking, you're probably being too aggressive in your cut. Your calories are simply too low. You're trying to cut too fast. What you need to remember is for most people, you're not cutting for a bodybuilding show. You're not cutting for a photo shoot. You're cutting to either just be healthy. You're cutting to make a lifelong change in body composition. You're cutting to maybe be in a better weight class in a sport, right? That's usually what you're doing. You're not cutting so that you have to get ripped for some contest in a time frame. There's no need to rush it. If you are struggling to recover from doing a basic workout, and heavy squats are part of a basic workout for anybody who's trying to get into shape and serious about it, then it's time to consider that maybe you're cutting too fast. And what you need to remember is what every study has ever shown on fat loss, every long-term study on fat loss, the slower you cut, the longer and more likely you are to keep that fat off. And the faster you cut, the harder you're going to rebound afterwards, for a whole host of psychological and hormonal reasons. So take your time with it. Up your calories a bit. Cut a little slower. Cut your weight loss in half from what you're doing now and see if you can't squat a lot easier. I bet you that will fix the problem. Cut your calorie deficit in half. You're just not eating enough and you're trying to cut too quickly and it's destroying your recovery and you're probably losing muscle mass. All right, next question. I'm pursuing a long-standing goal that I've taken to calling 6 and 6, being simultaneously able to squat 6 plates with semi-visible abs. I'm currently building frequency towards a Bulgarian light program and working on cleaning up my diet. Squat is in the low 500s and my abs sometimes poke out in the morning. I think I have a pretty solid plan, but I was curious if you have any general advice for this type of goal. Thanks as always. I like that goal. That is a solid ass goal. Can we all agree with that? Dude's like, man, I want to squat 6 plates aside while having visible abs. You know what? More power to you. A lot of people would laugh. A lot of people might go, yeah, whatever. But he's like, I'm already squatting in the low 500s and I have abs first thing in the morning sometimes. So in other words, this guy needs to lose 7 or 8 pounds of fat and put what, 60 pounds on his squat as a long-term goal. I don't think that's unreasonable, and that's a solid ass goal. What can you call that? Yeah, put it in place. All right, you're already in the low 500s and you ease into Bulgarian light. Here's what I noticed a little bit and I'm going to continue to pursue, and something I've noticed other people who do Bulgarian light run into. When you go on a clean diet, when you start getting really strong on these Bulgarian style trainings, a lot of people struggle. Eventually, once they start reaching near their genetic potential, they start running into appetite issues. In other words, your total work capacity, once you get so damn strong that your work capacity is high, when you start doing any sort of cardio or GPP work in with it, with your weekly workloads, your energy needs go up so high that you will struggle sometimes to even keep the body fat you have. You start to see a nice gradual recompositioning effect at a certain point. So here's what I think. I think if you ease into a Bulgarian style training and you start pushing closer to that goal, I think your total calorie burn is going to go up. And so therefore, if you start eating a little cleaner, you're more likely to burn off fat. I think, based on what you told me already, if you can get to your 6 plate squat using a Bulgarian system, I predict you're going to lose body fat as you get closer to that goal, as long as you keep your diet fairly clean. Again, just due to total energy balance, it is most likely to occur. And so if that happens, you'll probably end up reaching that goal without many other changes other than just keeping your diet on point. You may not actually have to really dramatically reduce calories. Just keep them managed and keep your diet on point with a high quality diet, and you'll probably eventually reach a threshold with this where you just start to recomposition automatically over time, over the course of months and months. So I think your goal is reasonable. Give it a try like that. Like you said, just clean your diet up, work towards the goal, and you'll probably get there. You'll probably get there. And if you fall a little bit short, then make adjustments as you go to reach your actual goal. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what is your opinion on the T-bar row as a strength and hypertrophy movement? Can this variation replace the Pendlay row if it is used with 25 plates for a longer range of motion? I used to do T-bar rows. I used to do really heavy T-bar rows. Only thing I'm going to say is that if you start getting strong, you're not going to be able to put enough 25s on the bar to do T-bar rows. So really, what it comes down to is just doing them normal. What I found is that if you just grab one of those V handles and put it over on the end of a bar, and you find the right back angle, that you're going to be able to come pretty much to a deep stretch at the bottom, even with 45s. Totally doable. Totally doable. With 45s, again, it's just all about finding the exact right back angle to where you can get the deep stretch without them hitting the floor, because you're going to run out of weight real fast on the 25s if you actually really try to get strong at this movement. I prefer T-bar rows because I feel they have better carryover to other lifts. I feel like because you're pulling from the floor and you have perfect control of consistent range of motion, and again, back to that dead stop training from the floor, I feel like it carries over better as an accessory to other exercises. So I think the Pendlay row is more sport specific for people who do other pulls off the floor, like deadlifts. So I just prefer the Pendlay row. But for just general strength and hypertrophy, I've used T-bar rows in the past and actually gotten pretty damn strong at them. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did some on camera originally back on the Ice Cream Fitness channel. I'm pretty sure I did do some on camera. I know I recorded some. So you guys have probably, some of you guys have seen me do them out there. So they're good exercise. And like I said, it's up to you. It's about finding that right angle, the right angle to do it at, so that you can get that stretch. But I still wouldn't rule out Pendlay rows. I think they're a great lift. All right, next question. Hi Jason, what would be a good concurrent training program for deadlift sets and reps and RM for strength and hypertrophy if I wanted to deadlift 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? I don't know about reps here, bro. If you're gonna deadlift 3 days a week, we shouldn't be talking about reps. We need to just be thinking in terms of volume and really intensity, because you're not going to do more than 5 reps. You are not going to do more than 5 reps deadlifting 3 days a week without burning yourself out. You're going to train yourself into the ground. I would stick in the 1 to 5 rep range. 1 to 5, and either do submaximal singles or submaximal triples. Remember when I talked about deadlifting every day? I would come in and do singles with 85%, 5 singles every day for a little while with 85% of my max. And I did that without overtraining, and it gave me good practice on the exercise. But in your case, you're talking about getting hypertrophy from it also. The 3 to 5 rep range, and maybe have a heavy, medium, light day. That's how you're going to have to do the concurrent training if you're going to do 3 days a week. Meaning, maybe Monday, do a 5 rep max. Wednesday, do a 5 rep max with 10 or 15% less weight, or maybe take 20% off. So in other words, if you did 500 for 5 reps on Monday, I would consider, let's say you did that with 500 pounds, maybe cut down to 420 and do a 3x5 or a 5x5 on Wednesday, and then maybe Friday do the same weight for a 3x3, or reverse those. Maybe do that weight, say maybe do the 425 or 3x3 on Wednesday, after doing a 500 for 5 on Monday, and then Friday comes around, maybe try to hit a 3x5 or a 5x5 with your Wednesday 3x3 weight. So then you kind of have a heavy, light, medium protocol, and that's how I would consider concurrent training with something like that. But if you try to do a lot of reps, you're going to bury yourself deadlifting at that frequency. That's just the reality of it. So it's just going to be about balancing those things out. All right, next question. All right, the next question by none other than Austin Slater. Your recent video talked about eccentric loading and tendinitis. What would be some of your favorite set/rep schemes for older guys with hypertrophy as the primary goal? All right, bro, I always like this poster. Austin, I'm going to say, dude, your name is baller as hell. Austin Slater. I mean, that just sounds, that's like Duke Nukem. It's like your dad probably gave you that name, realized your last name was Slater, and he's like, I'm going to name you Austin Slater. My son to be Alpha Mofo. That's exactly what your dad said when he named you. All right, the joking aside about that. Reps and sets. For older guys, for hypertrophy is a primary goal. Lots of triples. 5x3, 7x3, 10x3. Maybe 5x5 is the lightest thing I'd recommend. And avoid slow eccentrics. In other words, we keep the weight heavy. Keep the weight moderately heavy up to very heavy. Get enough volume, and you can get enough volumes with 3s and 5s for max hypertrophy. We know that. The research shows that. But because we aren't doing a lot of reps in the grand scheme of things, and if you pick exercises that don't have too much eccentric loading, we cut down our total eccentric volume dramatically. Just by the lack of total reps, because you're not going to do more than 25 to 30 reps total with even a 10x3 or a 5x5. So I really think that's the way to go, and that way you can greatly reduce the eccentric reps. You can greatly reduce them, particularly when we get into lifts like the deadlift, where you start every lift on the bottom. Yeah, that'd be the way to go, brother. Again, you're just trying to reduce total volume while still keeping total tonnage and intensity fairly high. And that's kind of the whole point. That's, again, what I've observed over the years. That's what coaches like Ripto have observed. A lot of other coaches over the years have observed with older lifters. That way you cut down the total eccentric volume, but you still keep enough intensity and mechanical tension with just enough volume to keep stimulating growth. All right, next question. Hi, Coach. How far should your intermediate strength protocol take someone? What numbers do you expect them to hit till it wouldn't work anymore for them? Okay, he's talking about my off-season linear periodization program. Honestly, I wrote that for off-season athletes, so they would, an athlete might use that indefinitely, and the reason is because it's their off-season and then they lose some gains during their in-season, so they'd be able to repeat the process. Also, most athletes are at least above average genetics. They're above average genetics athletically, or they wouldn't be playing sports. So therefore, they're going to progress better. What people need to remember, genetically gifted people can run novice programs longer than other novices. Genetically gifted people can run intermediate programs longer than other intermediates can. In other words, there are guys out there who've run linear progression programs all the way to 500 plus squats and 600 plus pound deadlifts. Put that in perspective. There are people who have run starting strength and hit over 500 pound squats and over 600 pound deadlifts at the end. Now, these are the genetically gifted. For everyone else, I'm going to say my linear intermediate program, you're probably going to cap out on it at around where I tell guys a natural should try to get to. And I say to most of you guys that the average genetic, average height natural should shoot for a 200 overhead press, a 300 bench, 400 squat, and a 500 deadlift, right? This program is probably going to cap out about there. Now, it could take you running quite a few 12-week phases of it, but I'm going to say for the genetically average guy, that is going to be the limits of this program. By the time you get there, you're going to have to find something else. And that just is what it is. All right, next question. All right. Hi, Jason. I just had a baby and getting very limited sleep, 4 hours, give or take. What could be the best way to manage recovery if sleep is not optimal? Thanks. Well, congrats on the baby. Congrats on the new baby. That's going to interfere with your training. Let's be realistic here. Do what you can do. The best way you can mitigate recovery is to put your training on the back burner. Stop trying to progress. You know how I tell people on my novice program, the cutting version, they cut a third of the volume out, right? You cut a third of the volume out and you reduce the progression. You probably need to do the same thing right now. There is no way you are going to sleep enough to fully recover and grow from any good program on 4 hours a night. So I would say whatever if you're doing a 5x5 right now, cut down to 3x5. If you're doing a 3x5 and that's where you're at in your progression, cut down to a 2x5. In other words, cut about 30% of your volume out and just try to maintain the strength that you have. Just maintain what you have till you get through this phase with the newborn baby, because again, as anyone who's gone through this, I haven't personally, but I've watched it many, many, many times. And have even helped friends of mine train who had babies before. You're not going to progress during that time. Back your training down to just maintenance. Keep what you have. Keep what you have. And once baby gets sleeping patterns under control and you can sleep again, then you can go back to progressing. But what you need to focus on right now is keeping the gains that you have already so that you can restart without losing any ground later when you're able to. And that's how you're going to have to do it, because you're not going to be able to manage recovery. But you can keep what you have. All right, next question. Hey Jason, seeing your recent videos about isolation exercises and me doing boxing 5 times a week makes me start to believe that isolation movements for arms are not only useless but possibly even detrimental. I do boxing only on a recreational level, but I enjoy so much, and that's why I do it so often. But it also means I sometimes weight train on the same day as boxing, weight training first. I notice that when I do isolation movements, I tend to get DOMs in my arms, which isn't good for boxing. And if I do curls on the same day as boxing, I start to get muscle pumps, which makes me unable to hold arms in proper position during boxing. That being said, do you think isolation movements are actually detrimental for athletes? I also noticed that whenever I got stronger on bench press and chin-ups, I got stronger on curls, tricep extensions, but it never worked the other way around. All right, let's go back to that point about the studies that I talked about. The studies have confirmed the exact same thing that you noticed. In other words, if you get stronger on the bench press or stronger on the chin-up and you don't curl or do tricep extensions, but then you go back to curling and doing tricep extensions, you're stronger on them. The strength doesn't transfer as much the other way. In other words, isolation movements don't actually make you as strong per unit of muscle growth on the isolation movement as if you just built the same muscle in those muscles with a compound. In other words, the research shows that bench pressing will improve your tricep extensions faster than doing tricep extensions will. So if we come back to the point of you need the muscles to be stronger, yes, size does equal strength, but it does seem like you get more strength per unit of size from compound movements, even when you have to isolate the muscle. So back to your point, dealing with the DOMs and tendinitis from isolation movements interfering with your primary sport, and the fact that the isolation movements don't even make you as strong in those smaller muscles. Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that athletes don't need to isolate anything outside of a prehab or rehab environment. I think it's silly. And I know that's going to fly in the face of West Side lovers who tell you you need to do 157 sets of tricep extensions every week. But you know what? Some of the guys in those circles don't even do that. One of those guys is famous for saying, what am I going to get out of a tricep extension that I'm not going to get out of a 700-pound board press? Nothing except tendinitis. Exactly. So yeah, I agree with your findings here. Skip them. Do chin-ups, do power cleans, do bench press, do push presses. That's what you need. That's what you need for your arms as a boxer. Learn to make them explosive and use your whole body. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I have had some very noticeable muscle tightness in my upper back recently. It almost feels like my lat or trapezius is extremely tight. For the most part, it has only been tightness, not necessarily pain, but there have been a few moments when it almost went into a spasm. I believe I may have been having issues with thoracic flexion on the barbell squat, and I recently watched a really good video that Alan Thrall and a person from the Barbell Medicine channel put out on correcting thoracic flexion on the squat. That person was most likely Jordan Feigenbaum, by the way. I'm just throwing that in there. Back to your question. The Barbell Medicine coach provided a helpful cue, proud chest, to remind one to pull their lats back and down. My question is if I have had some possible overreaching or muscle tightness cause my form breakdown and fix my form, should I continue to progress with correct form from there, or do I need to do a full deload? Thanks, Jason. Keep up the informative videos coming. Okay. What I'm going to recommend is almost a partial deload, but more of a reset. So if you correct this issue, in theory, because you're having better upper back tightness, you should be able to squat slightly more weight. But again, you're going to have to relearn the new technique because it's going to change your bar path. Because if you're keeping the same bar path as before, The weight may not have been midfoot before, but it will be now, so then you've got a different bar path, or you're going to have to recorrect the bar path to keep it midfoot. There's going to be some changes you need to make. You're going to have to learn a new bar path again. Accordingly, you probably need to reset the weight a bit, meaning I'd probably cut the weight 10% from what you've been lifting, maybe even 15, and relearn the technique with the slightly lighter weight, and then build back up from there using some sort of linear progression. So in other words, let's say you've been squatting 300 for sets of 5. You probably need to cut down somewhere in the maybe the 260 to 270 range and start doing sets of 5, get the new technique down after a few sessions, then start adding 5 pounds a session back on. So go back and do like a linear progression afterwards. That's what I would recommend, because you're probably making a major change in technique and bar path, and this will get you time to adapt to and learn the new technique, to master it, and then go back to progressing on it. And it won't take you very long to surpass your old numbers, because if you were using inefficient leverages like that, you're going to surpass your old numbers fairly quick anyways once you get the technique down. So don't worry about it. Just go back and relearn it and use a linear progression. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.